which is definitely something that I think I can struggle with sometimes, because sometimes we're in a hurry and we need to do things right away. But this time delay and incidental teaching strategy looks like there's 5 steps. Stating your direction, waiting, I would say 5 seconds, but it really depends on the child, or in a classroom. It could be a little bit longer if you have a classroom full of kids, as well as I would argue that it depends on the direction that you're stating. Ask a general question, repeat the direction again, and then provide any necessary assistance prompting. I think the big one on that one is the wait time. You know, if you're trying to get 6 kids out the door to go play outside, and no one's really getting it, but you're only outside for 15 minutes, and if it takes them 10 minutes to get out there, you know, it's hard to wait for that time. And I know this is something that we talked about in the past, but if you give children that time to process, there can be a lot of learning in that very small portion of time, whether it's 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. So the next strategy we're going to talk about is the MAND model, which is something that I was unfamiliar with before I started Pyramid. And Catherine explains this really well, so feel free to jump in at any time. But the MAND model is used to help children use the appropriate language at the appropriate times. So, the goal is to assist a child in knowing when and how to use the appropriate words. What is the expectation around language? So I especially like to use it in Summit County, but the example that I like to use is a child who, you're going outside because it's snowing in June, because it's Colorado, and a child needs help with their zipper. And they walk up to you and they're, and they can't figure out their zipper. So this is a huge teaching moment for that child. And when you use that MAND model, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the child to most appropriate say, Miss Adriana, can you help me with my zipper? But one of the big pieces that you want to pay attention to when you're using this MAND model incidental teaching strategy is you may come across a child who is echolalic, is that how you pronounce it? Mm-hmm. Who is echolalic. And what that means is, it sounds like such a big fancy word, what that means is you might say, I'm the teacher, Adriana comes up to me and she needs help with her jacket. If a child is echolalic, if I say to Adriana, say, can you help me? She might turn around and say, Adriana, can you help me? That is a child who's echolalic. The child is just echoing what I just said to them, whereas there isn't a lot of learning there. They're just repeating what I say. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind if you're ever implementing this strategy at some point during your day. Does anyone have any questions about that? I feel like they're really very serious terms for a relatively simple concept.
So I was just going to say, like, you did a great job explaining it, Lacey, but what can be confusing about it is it's a really complicated, actually the pyramid way of describing it, description for a really simple strategy that many teachers do 20,000 times a day, every day in their classroom, and you probably didn't know it was called the MAND model. It just means, the MAND part means mandate. It means you're directing a child to say exactly what you model for them to say. You understand? So you're saying to a child, oh, looks like you need help. Can you say, help me please? For some children, you might not use the beginning part, can you say? You might just look right at them and say, help me please. And a lot of children will just intuitively know that you're prompting them. Instead of saying the first part, say, help me please, you just say, help me please. And then oftentimes children will just go, help me please, right? You're just telling them exactly what you want them to say as a way of supporting not only their language, like use of language in appropriate ways, but healthy and appropriate ways of getting their needs met instead of grunting or yelling or, all the other things that kids do. So it's called MAND model, but I never have heard any teacher actually call it that. It's but teachers do it all the time.
Thank you. I definitely think it's definitely something that's fairly simple. But the big takeaway is if you find you have a child who is just repeating you, taking away that can you help me, or say can you help me. So taking away those words. So next we're going to move into talking about prompting. We're going to talk a little bit about the different ways that prompting can look, the different levels of prompting. But by definition, prompting procedures include any help given to learners that assist them in using a specific skill And they're often used in conjunction with other evidence-based practices such as time delay, reinforcements, things that we've been talking about. So the first thing we'll talk about in regards to prompts is the hierarchy of prompts, which in more simplified terms is exactly what Ashley was talking about with her child, with her vignette, Casey, I believe. It's just the level of assistance that you might give a child. And one of the biggest things to remember is that all children need different levels of assistance. Developmentally, they might be at different levels. You know, a level 4, a level 3, an adult might point or verbally or model to a child how to perform a skill. So it might be fairly direct. Whereas a level 1, the adult provided 100% full physical assistance to complete the skill. Whereas that might look like an adult went over, put their hand on a child's hand, put their hand on the zipper and help them zip up their coat. So it's a very directed level of prompting. Is anyone familiar with the term chaining? So what chaining is, there's forward chaining and backwards chaining. But working off that hierarchy of prompts, what it is it's looking at a most to least or a least to most level of prompting. Most to least is used to teach a child a new skill. So this might be when they need the most assistance that you can give them. Whereas least to most, or backwards chaining prompting, begins with the least intrusive prompt and uses more intrusive prompts as corrective feedback. For example, teaching a child to wash their hands.
And can I just give a quick example? Just to link to the man model example of prompting a child. There might be some children that you work with where you literally have to feed them the words and say, so that's doing most to least. So you're teaching a child a new skill because they really don't have much language. They don't ask for help very often. They barely know those words. So you're literally handing them, piece by piece the words you want them to say by saying, can you say, help me please? And then you wait and they might just barely grunt out the words, help me. They barely can say it, but you reward them and then help them. But there are other children in your classroom maybe who are really verbal, who they know how to ask for help, but sometimes they forget and they get frustrated and they're struggling with their zipper. And what do you do in that case? You don't hand them the words. You say something like, what do you say? Are there some words you can use? That's like least to most. And let's say, because they know how to say help me please. Then maybe you have to say, might you say help? What might you say after that? Like you might give them the first word of a phrase because you're doing least to most to help them just recall. You're helping them recall a skill they already have. So you kind of understand the difference? So all children, that's having like a real individualized approach and just a very simple example that teachers do all the time to the way that you support children in learning skills. Okay.
Thank you, Catherine. And that was actually a big help because my computer seems to be having some sort of issue. I don't know if anybody observed that. But when I go to view my slideshow from this current slide, it has a little moment there. So
it did that by itself?
Yeah, like 4 times in a row. Watch this.
Okay.
It's almost like you set up a slideshow to automatically transition slides, and you set it up on a timing where
Yeah, with like 1
click,
second in
click,
between.
and you have to take it out.
So what?
Oh,
I
wow.
don't really know what's happening with that. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to kind of back it out a little bit, so it's going to look a little bit ugly here for a minute. But once we get to the next video that we're going to watch, we should be okay. So my apologies that it's being a little temperamental. But anywho, so next we're going to talk about that least to most prompting, which was backwards chaining. The first level provides an opportunity for the child to respond without prompts. So that first level is a level of independence. The remaining levels are sequences from least amount to the most amount of assistance. So I mean, think about it as a pyramid. You start with the least amount, then you work your way up a little bit more, a little bit more. The final prompt is the most assistance, which can look like full physical assistance, using a physical touch with a child. If a prompt is to get them to go sit down in their chair, the full physical assistance might be to put your hands on their shoulders and gently lead them to their chair and have them sit down. So there are several steps when it comes to least to most prompts. There's the planning step, some implementing prompts, and then some monitoring. We talk about this a lot today. You know, that process of just on a bigger picture of planning, implementing, and then monitoring or evaluating. So the next thing we're going to talk about is a discrete or a chained skill. A discrete skill requires a single response, such as pointing to an object. It could be a prompt as simple as that. Whereas a chained skill requires a number of individual behaviors which are sequenced together, such as washing your hands or cleaning up. Can anyone else think of some others that might be might be a chained skill, might be a sequence of behaviors that need to occur?
Putting on winter clothes.
Say that again.
Putting on clothes to go outside.
Putting on your winter clothes, is that what you said, Susan? Yes. I definitely think that could be a routine, especially for our county. That could be something that may cause some challenging behavior for children. So that's a perfect example. Thank you. So now we're going to talk about some common mistakes. And actually, before we do that, I feel like we've been sitting here for a little while now that it's about 2 o'clock. Does anybody feel like they need to get up and stretch for 2 minutes? Jess, I see you shaking your head. Phyllis, everybody get up for 1 second. Does anybody do yoga in the room? Nobody does yoga? Megan does. Megan, let's hear a yoga pose. And of course, if you have any injuries or feel
Let's
uncomfortable, you
hear
do
a
not
yoga pose.
And
Show us the yoga pose, Megan.
Fall asleep.
Yes, no falling asleep though.
Oh.
Megan's going to teach us a pose.
Oh, if you just want to do an easy stand-up pose, you can just do tree pose. So you balance on either your left foot or your right foot, and you can bring your other foot up to either your calf, up to your thigh. Just don't push on your knee, whichever one, and just try to stand still and balance. And you can put your hands in front of you, put them up, either one, whatever feels good for you. And you do that, try to hold that one, and then try to switch to your other side.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Megan. Does anyone have any others? Catherine, do you have any?
Catherine goes to yoga.
Oh, yeah, look at her. She's so
I got it.
Catherine, hit us with one.
I haven't been in a while, but
You could
okay,
do
another one that
chair
really
pose for season.
you could do chair pose. Okay,
It's not you.
so with chair poses, you put your hands kind of straight up, your arms straight up. To me, that feels good too. Just that, just we've been sitting, and then this is where it gets hard, you guys. Is you stand with your legs just a tiny bit apart, and you bend your knees down, and try to tighten like your core, right, Megan? And what else? You're trying to drop in your butt towards the
You
floor.
literally just want to basically sit down like you're sitting in a chair, so your torso area should stay straight up.
Stay
Like
straight.
it's good posture.
And just laying kind of towards the ceiling.
Like you're pulling up on your core, you're pulling your belly button up to hold your core, but you should feel it mostly in your legs. So just bending.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and sometimes put your arms up. Do you or no?
No, they're
always straight
I
up.
see you guys do
And
some
your
wall
shoulders
sits over
are
there
like-
like that. We'll time you for a minute and have
back.
Your shoulders are back.
back and dance a bit.
They say that if you're going to go into inversions, you should just keep your hands like always how you want to do a perfect handstand.
Oh, like my perfect handstand.
But go ahead and stretch. I see you stretch.
Oh, so you're
Go ahead and stretch a little bit. Or if you need to just, move around a little bit, you can do that.
Woo.
Does everybody feel at least a little better?
Get some more cake if you need to help you get through the day. The coffee is actually still hot if you want a cup of coffee. She's doing really well.
Yeah, they're ready.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's usually my left hand today, so it's this one.
Is it considered?
It's just generic. Osteoarthritis. Kick it in.
Really?
Do that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to matter what kind of stretching I do. It still just hurts. Crisscrossing also this year. He's done.
Oh, has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can stop this.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
Sorry.
We've been